At Christmas, my sister gave my daughter a DNA kit to nuke my marriage, but karma nuked hers. When her son took one too, and the results came back. Sup, Reddit. This one's a mess. My sister tried to prove my wife cheated and humiliate her in front of the whole family. When it backfired, she tried to play victim, but it was too late, and nobody bought it. Grab your popcorn and enjoy this shit show. So I've got this sister, Paige, and she's been a pain in my butt since we were kids. You know that sibling who always got away with everything? Who could do no wrong in mom and dad's eyes, even when she was objectively being a nightmare? Yeah, that's Paige. Golden child syndrome mixed with main character delusions and a side of pure entitlement. I'm Hunter, 36 male, by the way, married to an incredible woman named Kate, and we've got a 12-year-old daughter named Melanie. Good kid, smart as heck, loves science and building stuff. We live in the Phoenix suburbs, got a decent house, 2 cars that actually run, and life's been pretty good for the past decade or so. Kate and I met at a friend's wedding when I was 21. She was there solo, I was there solo. We ended up at the same table during dinner and hit it off immediately. We dated for about 2 years before I proposed, just the two of us at this overlook she loved, and got married 6 months later. Melanie came along about a year after that, and honestly, fatherhood's been the best thing that ever happened to me. Kid's got these bright hazel eyes, almost green in sunlight, and she's curious about everything. Life was good, stable. And then Paige decided that wasn't acceptable. See, Paige has never liked Kate. From the moment I introduced them, there was this immediate hostility. Kate tried, she really did. Brought drinks to family dinners, complimented Paige's cooking even though it was mediocre at best, asked about her job at the insurance company. Nothing worked. Paige had already decided Kate wasn't good enough for me, and that was that. Call it jealousy, toxic behavior, I don't know. The turning point was Paige's wedding about 8 years ago. She got married to this guy Sean. Decent dude, way too good for her. And she picked out these champagne-colored dresses for all the bridesmaids. Champagne. Not white, not off-white. Literally champagne-colored. Kate was a bridesmaid because Paige insisted, even though they barely tolerated each other. Day of the wedding, Kate shows up in the exact dress Paige picked out. Same color, same style, nothing different from any other bridesmaid. But somehow, in Paige's mind, Kate was trying to steal her spotlight. She spent half the reception shooting death glares at Kate and made passive-aggressive comments to anyone who'd listen about how some people just can't help making everything about themselves. It was insane. But that's my sister. Creates drama out of thin air and then plays the victim when people call her on it. After that, it was constant warfare. Every family gathering turned into some kind of competition. Kate wore a new outfit. Paige would mention she saw something similar at Ross Dress for Less last year. Melanie got an A on a math test. Paige's son Scott did better, obviously, and also just got accepted into some gifted program we'd never heard of. Kate made dinner for a family thing. Too much garlic. Not enough seasoning. Overcooked. Whatever. The worst part? My parents ate it up. Mom and Dad have always babied Paige, made excuses for her behavior, acted like she could do no wrong. When I'd bring up how Paige treated Kate, Mom would say something like, "Oh, you know how your sister is," or "She doesn't mean anything by it." Dad would just change the subject entirely. Like if we didn't talk about it, the problem didn't exist. Classic enablers. But Kate and I kept the peace for Melanie's sake. She and Scott were close, only about a year apart in age, and we didn't want adult nonsense ruining their relationship. The kids would spend holidays running around together, playing video games, building stuff with Legos. They were tight, and that mattered more than anything. Sean was always cool about everything. He'd apologize for Paige when she got out of hand, try to smooth things over, play mediator. Good guy. I felt bad for him, honestly. Kate handled it better than I did. She'd just smile and nod when Paige started her mess, then vent to me later at home where Paige couldn't hear. We had this agreement. Don't engage, don't escalate. Just let Paige tire herself out. It worked well enough. Until last Christmas, when Paige decided subtle warfare wasn't enough anymore. We were at my parents' place in Scottsdale for the usual holiday gathering. Presents were under the tree, kids hyped up on sugar, adults having too much punch and pretending to enjoy each other's company. Gift exchange time rolled around, and Paige made a big production of handing out presents. She'd gotten everyone something. Mom got a fancy scarf, Dad got some craft drink sampler, Sean got a new watch, Scott got the latest gaming headset. Even Melanie got a gift from her, which was surprising given how Paige usually operated. Then she got to Kate, handed her a small wrapped box with this smile that didn't reach her eyes. Kate opened it. Inside was a grocery store gift card. $25. I figured you could use it for, well, whatever, she said with a little shrug. I know money's tight with only one income. Kate worked full-time as a graphic designer. We had two incomes. Paige knew that. This was just another dig, wrapped up as generosity. Kate smiled. Thanks, Paige. Very thoughtful. But I saw the hurt flash across her face before she covered it. And I was done. Then came Melanie's present from Paige. She got her one of those Ancestry DNA kits. The ones where you spit in a tube, mail it off, and find out you're 2% Irish or whatever. Melanie loved it. She's into science, thinks genetics are fascinating, so she opened that box like it was the latest iPhone. Meanwhile, I'm watching Paige watch us, and there's this look on her face. Smug. Satisfied. Like she just made a chess move she'd been planning for months. Kate caught it too. We made eye contact across the room, and I could see the same thought running through her head. What the heck is she up to? That night, after everyone left and Melanie was in bed, Kate and I talked in our bedroom. Your sister's planning something, Kate said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Yeah, I got that feeling too, I replied. But what? It's a DNA test. What's the angle? Kate was quiet for a second, then it clicked. Melanie's eyes. I frowned. What about them? They're hazel, almost green. You have brown eyes. I have brown eyes. Your sister's been making comments about it for years. Little digs about how genetics are funny, how you never know what you're gonna get. Hunter, I think she's trying to imply Melanie isn't yours. My stomach dropped. Because Kate was right. Paige had been dropping hints for years. Never direct enough to confront, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. Comments like, isn't it weird how Melanie doesn't look like you? Or, where'd those eyes come from? Always with this fake innocent tone. She was actually implying Kate cheated, that I was raising another man's kid. I was furious, like, seeing red, want to put my fist through a wall furious. But I'm not the type to blow up. Never have been. Then we let Melanie take the test, I said finally. Kate looked at me. You sure? Positive. Because when it comes back showing I'm her dad, which it will, I'm shoving those results in Paige's face and watching her squirm. Kate nodded. Okay, then we do it. Melanie was excited about the test anyway. She swabbed her cheek the next day, sealed it up, mailed it off. The kid was checking the tracking number daily, like she was waiting on a package from Amazon. What we didn't expect was Scott getting involved. Scott, being 13 and naturally curious, saw Melanie doing the DNA test and wanted one too. He started bugging Sean and Paige about it, talking about how cool it would be to find out their ancestry, maybe discover some distant relatives. Sean thought it sounded fun. A family thing, educational, no big deal. Here's where things got interesting. Paige actually tried to shut it down, made excuses about the cost, about how it was a waste of time, about how they already knew their ancestry. But Sean had already ordered the kit, and Scott was stoked. 3 weeks later, Melanie's results came in. I was at work when she texted me. All caps, multiple exclamation points, the works. The kid was pumped. I told her to wait until I got home so we could look at them together. That evening, the three of us sat at the kitchen table, Melanie's tablet in the middle showing her ancestry breakdown. Mostly European, some Mediterranean, a tiny percentage of North African that Melanie thought was awesome. Standard stuff. Then, the DNA relatives section. Top of the list, Hunter Mitchell. Father, 50% match. See? Melanie grinned at me. Told you I'm definitely yours. I ruffled her hair. Never doubted it for a second, kid. Kate caught my eye across the table, and we shared this moment of quiet victory. The results confirmed exactly what we already knew. And now, we had proof. I texted Paige a screenshot of the results with a single message. Looks like Melanie's mine after all. Weird how genetics work, huh? She didn't respond. Radio silence. Which was fine by me. Let her stew in it. But 3 days later, Sean called me. His voice was shaking. He dropped a bomb no one saw coming. Hunter, I need to talk to you. In person. Can I come over? 20 minutes later, he was sitting in my living room looking like death. His face was pale, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. Kate brought him water. He didn't touch it. Scott's results came back. He said quietly. I waited. Something in his tone told me this wasn't going to be good news. I'm not his father. The room went dead silent. Kate's hand went to her mouth. I just stared at Sean, trying to process what he'd just said. What do you mean you're not his father? I asked. He pulled out his phone, opened the DNA results, and slid it across the coffee table. I picked it up, read through it. Scott's DNA relatives were listed. Some distant cousins, a few fourth and fifth connections. No Sean. Not as a father, not as anything. But there was a match for a half-sibling. Scott's little sister, Chloe, 7 years old. I tested Chloe too, Sean said, his voice cracking. She's not mine either. I sat back on the couch, feeling like I'd been punched. This wasn't one affair, one mistake. This was years of lying. Years of Paige letting Sean raise kids that weren't his. Never saying a word, never planning to say a word. Does Paige know? Kate asked. Sean laughed bitterly. Oh, she knows. I confronted her last night. She tried to deny it at first, said the test must be wrong, that these things aren't always accurate. But I pushed, and she finally admitted it. Said she'd been having an affair with some guy from work. Said it happened during a rough patch in our marriage. He looked at me. We never had a rough patch, Hunter. We were fine. She just decided to cheat. Jesus Christ, I muttered. I filed for divorce this morning, Sean continued, and I'm going for full custody. I don't care that they're not biologically mine. They're my kids. I raised them, but I'm not leaving them with her. Not after this. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to that? He was a good guy, a good father, and Paige had destroyed him. For what? Because she was bored? Because she could? After Sean left, Kate and I just sat there in silence. We were completely stunned. Your sister tried to expose me as a cheater, Kate said finally, her voice flat. And instead, she exposed herself. Karma, I said. Karma's a witch. But the satisfaction I felt was short-lived, because the real victims here were Scott and Chloe. 2 kids who didn't ask for any of this, who were about to watch their family implode. The news spread through the family fast. My parents found out from Paige, who apparently called them crying about how Sean was overreacting and being cruel. Mom called me later that day, wanting me to talk Sean out of the divorce and custody fight. I shut that down immediately, told her Paige had earned every consequence coming her way. She didn't like that answer. Neither did Dad when he tried the same approach a few days later. They were never going to hold Paige accountable for anything. Kate saw the look on my face. Your mom? Yep. Wants me to support Paige. Tell Sean to back off. Are you? Heck no. I looked at Kate. Sean's a good guy. He's been a good father to those kids. If he wants to fight for custody, I'm backing him. Not Paige. Within a week, the whole family knew. Christmas dinner plans were coming up, and suddenly everyone had opinions. Some sided with Sean. Others, mostly my parents and a few of Paige's friends, sided with her, claiming Sean was being vindictive and cruel. Paige started calling me, texting constantly, voicemails that went from begging for help to accusing me of abandoning her. I ignored most of them, but one night she showed up at our house unannounced. Kate answered the door. I heard Paige's voice from the living room already escalating. I need to talk to Hunter. Let me in. He doesn't want to talk to you, Kate said calmly. Of course you'd say that. This is probably exactly what you wanted, to turn him against his own family. You're such a home-wrecking witch. Oh, wow. That's rich coming from you, Paige. I got up, walked to the door, stepped between them. What's going on? Kate's right. I don't want to talk to you. Paige's face was blotchy, eyes red from crying. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm your sister. And Sean's a good guy who didn't deserve what you did to him, I shot back. You cheated, Paige. You lied for years. You let him raise kids that weren't his. And now you're mad there are consequences? It was a mistake, she pleaded, but there was an edge to her voice. I messed up, okay? But Sean's trying to destroy me. He's poisoning everyone against me, and you're just letting it happen. You destroyed yourself, I said. Paige's expression shifted. The fake vulnerability vanished, replaced by cold anger. You're choosing him over me. Your own blood. I'm choosing what's right. Right, she said bitterly. You always did think you were better than everyone else. Must be nice up there on your high horse, judging everyone. I'm not judging everyone. Just you. Fine, she spat. When this all blows up in your face, and it will, don't come crying to me. You made your choice. She stormed off. Kate closed the door, locked it. We stood there for a second, just processing. That went well, Kate said dryly. I snorted. Yeah, real productive. But as much as I wanted to stay out of it, I knew we were already in it. Paige wasn't going to let this go quietly, and Sean was going to need all the help he could get. Paige's meltdown was spectacular. The texts started coming daily. Not to me. I'd blocked her after the doorstep confrontation. But to Kate, my parents, Sean, basically anyone with a phone number. Long, rambling messages about how everyone was against her, how Sean was poisoning the kids, how the family was abandoning her in her darkest hour. My mom bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. The phone calls started up again. Same script, different day. I told her the same thing every time. I wasn't enabling Paige's nonsense anymore. Eventually, she stopped asking and just went straight to the guilt trips about me being cold and heartless. I added her to my mental list of people who were part of the problem. Meanwhile, Sean was barely holding it together. He'd moved out of the house he shared with Paige, staying with a buddy while the divorce proceedings kicked off. The custody battle was going to be brutal. Paige had already lawyered up. Her strategy? Claimed Sean was obsessive, controlling, and emotionally abusive. Completely fabricated. Sean called me one night, voice tight with anger. She's telling people I was abusive, that I isolated her from friends, controlled the finances, all this garbage that never happened. And people are believing her. Who the heck is believing her? I asked. Your parents, for one. A few of her friends. Some people from church. She's got them all convinced I'm some monster who's trying to punish her for one mistake. Don't worry about them, I said. Focus on the custody case. Get your evidence together. Texts, emails, anything that shows what really happened. Let your lawyer handle the rest. I'm trying, Sean said, but she's making this so much harder than it needs to be. She won't let me see the kids without supervision, claims I'm a danger to them. Scott's asking questions, and I don't know what to tell him. The kid was caught in the middle of this nightmare, getting torn between two parents who couldn't be in the same room without it turning into a war zone. Melanie had asked about him a few times, wondering why Scott wasn't answering her texts. I'd given Melanie the sanitized version. Scott's parents were going through a divorce. Things were complicated, but I knew she'd eventually want the full story. That's when I decided it was time to stop playing defense and start playing offense. See, here's the thing about people like Paige. She thought she could control the story, manipulate the family, play the victim, and everyone would fall in line. She forgot that I'm not the type to roll over. I started gathering information. Texts from Paige over the years, the passive-aggressive comments, the snide remarks about Kate, the thinly veiled accusations about Melanie's paternity. I took screenshots, compiled them into a folder. Kate did the same, adding her own collection of messages and emails. Then I reached out to Sean's lawyer, offered to be a character witness, testify about Paige's behavior, provide documentation of her pattern of manipulation and lies. The lawyer was thrilled. Family testimony carries weight in custody cases, and having Paige's own brother speak against her would be damning. But I wanted to do more. Testifying was one thing, but I wanted something that would really hit Paige where it hurt. That's when I remembered the family trust. A little backstory. My grandparents on my dad's side set up a trust years ago for their grandkids. Not a fortune, but enough to be meaningful. Maybe 50 grand per grandkid, set to be distributed when we hit 40. I was supposed to get mine in 4 years. Paige would get hers in 2. But here's the kicker. The trust had a morality clause. If any beneficiary engaged in behavior deemed morally reprehensible by the trustee, in this case my dad, they could be removed from the trust entirely, and their share would be redistributed to the remaining beneficiaries. My grandparents were old school, very Catholic, very strict about family values. Infidelity? That would have been a deal breaker for them. And the language in the trust was clear. Adultery qualified as grounds for removal. I pulled up the trust documents, read through them carefully, then ran them by our family attorney to confirm my interpretation. He agreed. The morality clause was explicit. Adultery was specifically listed as disqualifying conduct, and as trustee, Dad had a fiduciary duty to enforce it. Armed with that legal opinion, I called my dad. Hey, Dad, we need to talk about the family trust. There was a pause. What about it? Specifically, the morality clause. You're aware Paige committed adultery, right? Another pause, longer this time. Hunter, I don't think... Dad, I'm not asking your opinion. I'm informing you that per the terms Grandma and Grandpa explicitly spelled out, Paige's actions disqualify her from receiving her share. As trustee, you're obligated to enforce that clause. I had our family attorney review it. It's ironclad. Now isn't the time. Now is exactly the time. Paige broke the rules. There are consequences. You enforce them, or I will. Dad sputtered. You can't do that. Actually, I can. And trust me, I'll do it. Silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Dad was conflict-averse, always had been. The idea of going to court, that terrified him more than disappointing Paige. Fine, he said finally. I'll review the documents. You do that? And Dad, if you try to bury this or pretend it doesn't apply, I'll know. And I'll make it very public. I hung up. Kate was watching from the couch, eyebrows raised. Did you just threaten your dad? I gave him a reality check, I corrected. There's a difference, she grinned. That was kind of hot. Glad you think so. Because Paige is about to lose her mind. 2 weeks later, Dad sent Paige a formal letter notifying her that she'd been removed from the trust due to violation of the morality clause. Her 50 grand was being redistributed, half to me, half to our other sibling, a younger brother who'd wisely stayed out of all this drama. And she lost it. Called Dad screaming, threatened to sue, claimed he was stealing from her. Dad, to his credit, held firm. Or maybe he was just too scared of me following through on my threat. Mom called crying about how cruel I was being, but I'd heard that song before. She hung up on me when I told her Paige could take it up with Grandma and Grandpa if she had a problem with their rules. Paige tried calling me after that, left voicemails screaming about how I'd ruined her life, how I was a terrible brother, how I'd always been jealous of her. I saved every single message, in case I needed it later. Kate asked me once if I felt bad about it. Not even a little bit, I said honestly. She gets what she earned. The custody battle turned into an all-out war, and Sean was fighting with everything he had. His lawyer was sharp, some hotshot family attorney named Julia. Sean had plenty of ammunition. Texts where Paige admitted to the affair. Credit card statements showing charges at hotels and restaurants during times she'd claimed to be working late. Testimony from coworkers who'd seen her with the guy. Some finance bro named Josh who worked in her office. Josh, by the way, wanted nothing to do with the situation. He lawyered up and went radio silent. Smart move on his part, but it left Paige without an ally. Guy wasn't going to swoop in and play stepdad. Paige's lawyer tried to paint Sean as unstable. Claimed he was obsessed with revenge, that he was using the kids as pawns, that his desire for full custody was about punishing Paige rather than protecting the kids. But Sean had the moral high ground, and his lawyer knew how to use it. The preliminary hearings were brutal. I attended a few as Sean's support system, sitting in the gallery while lawyers argued. Paige showed up looking like a kicked puppy, red eyes, tissue in hand, playing the grieving mother. The performance was Oscar-worthy, but the judge didn't seem impressed. At one hearing, Paige's lawyer tried to argue that Sean wasn't the biological father and therefore had no legal standing for custody. Julia shut that down fast. Your Honor, Mr. Sean has been the only father these children have known for their entire lives. He's raised them, provided for them, loved them. Biology doesn't erase that. The judge seemed to agree. Sean got temporary custody pending the final hearing, with Paige receiving supervised visitation twice a week. Paige didn't handle it well. She started showing up at the kids' school, trying to take them out for lunch or pick them up early. The school had to put a note in their system that only Sean was authorized to make decisions for Scott and Chloe. She threw a fit, threatened to sue the school, and generally made herself look worse. Scott was struggling hard. Melanie told me he had gotten into a fight at school. Some kid made a comment about his mom, and Scott punched him. Got suspended for 3 days. Sean was at his wits' end trying to keep Scott stable while dealing with Paige's constant chaos. That's when I decided to step in more directly. I called Sean. Bring Scott over this weekend. Let him and Melanie hang out. Kate and I will keep an eye on them. You sure? Sean asked. I'm sure. Kid needs normalcy. Melanie does too. Let them be kids for a few hours. That Saturday, Sean dropped Scott off at our place. The kid looked rough, but when Melanie suggested they play some video games, his face lit up a little. While the kids were upstairs, Sean, Kate, and I sat in the living room. How are you holding up? Kate asked. Sean shrugged. Some days are better than others. The hearing's in 3 weeks, and Julia thinks we've got a strong case. But Paige keeps throwing curveballs. Last week she claimed I'd stolen money from her bank account. Completely false, but it wastes time and makes me look bad. She's desperate, I said. Desperate people do dumb things. Yeah, well, her dumb things are making my life heck. I leaned forward. Sean, I'm testifying at the hearing. So is Kate. So are my parents, whether they like it or not. He blinked. Your parents? They're being subpoenaed. Julia's calling them as witnesses. They'll either tell the truth about Paige's behavior, or they'll perjure themselves. Either way, it works in your favor. He teared up. Hunter, I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out, but you don't have to. We've got your back. The hearing date approached, and I prepped for my testimony with Julia. She asked straightforward questions. I didn't hold back. Told her about the wedding incident, the years of passive-aggressive comments toward Kate, the DNA test stunt meant to imply Kate had cheated, the insulting Christmas gift. Kate prepped too. She had her own stories. Between the two of us, we had more than enough to paint a clear picture of who my sister really was. My parents, on the other hand, were furious about being subpoenaed. Mom called me in tears. How could you do this? We're going to have to testify against our own daughter. You're going to have to tell the truth, I corrected. She's your sister, and she's a liar. I'm not pretending otherwise to spare her feelings. Dad tried a different approach, called me, tried to reason with me, suggested we settle things within the family instead of airing everything in court. Too late for that, I said. The hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. Sean, Julia, Kate, and I showed up early. Paige arrived with her lawyer, looking put together but pale. Her eyes landed on me, and the hatred in her glare was almost physical. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a faint smell of old coffee and stress. The judge looked like she wasn't interested in theatrics. Sean's lawyer, Julia, opened strong, laid out the facts. Paige's affair, the years of lies, the DNA test that revealed Scott and Chloe weren't Sean's biological children. She presented documentation, texts, emails, credit card statements showing hotel charges during times Paige claimed to be at work conferences. Paige's lawyer tried to spin it as a private matter between spouses. Julia destroyed that argument in about 30 seconds. Your Honor, this isn't about punishing Ms. Paige for infidelity. It's about demonstrating a pattern of deception and manipulation that directly impacts her ability to provide a stable environment for these children. The judge listened, made notes, and called the first witness. Sean took the stand. He was calm, composed, answered questions about his relationship with Scott and Chloe, how he'd raised them from birth, how he'd been the primary caregiver while Paige focused on her career. They're my kids, Sean said. Biology doesn't change that. I've been their father for 13 and 7 years. I'm not walking away from them now. Next up, Paige herself. She took the stand looking every bit the wounded party. Her lawyer lobbed her softball questions about her love for the kids, her commitment to being a good mother, her regret over the affair. I made a terrible mistake, Paige said, her voice shaking, but I never stopped loving my children. Julia's cross-examination was surgical. Your affair lasted how long? Paige hesitated. A few years. So not a one-time mistake. A sustained pattern of infidelity over multiple years, correct? Yes, but... And during those years, you allowed your husband to believe the children were his. Yes. Did you ever consider telling him the truth? Long pause. I didn't want to hurt him. Julia raised an eyebrow. So instead, you let him raise children he believed were his own. Paige's composure cracked. I didn't plan for it to happen this way. This is all Sean's fault for being so vindictive. But you did plan to keep lying. If not for the DNA test, you would have continued the deception, correct? Paige didn't answer. The judge prompted her to respond. Yes, she whispered. It went downhill from there. Julia brought up the texts Paige had sent Sean after he filed for divorce. Manipulative, threatening, trying to use the kids as leverage. She brought up Paige's attempts to violate the temporary custody arrangement, her showing up at the school, her harassment of Sean's friends and family. By the time Julia was done, Paige looked like she'd been through a wood chipper. Then it was my turn to testify. I took the stand, swore in, and sat down. Julia smiled at me. Mr. Hunter, how long have you known the respondent, Ms. Paige? My whole life. She's my older sister. And during that time, have you observed any patterns of behavior that concern you? I glanced at Paige. She was staring at me with pure venom. I looked back at Julia. Yes, Paige has always been manipulative. She'd lie to get out of trouble, blame others, play the victim. Can you provide examples? I walked through the key incidents. The wedding dress drama, years of passive-aggressive behavior toward Kate, the insulting Christmas gift, and finally the DNA test stunt. And what was the result of that DNA test? Julia asked. It confirmed my daughter is mine. Paige's attempt to create doubt in my marriage backfired. Paige's lawyer objected. Speculation, Your Honor. The judge looked at me. Mr. Hunter, please stick to facts. Yes, Your Honor. The fact is, Paige gave my 12-year-old daughter a DNA test for Christmas, with clear intention to cause problems in my marriage. Julia nodded. How would you describe Miss Paige as a mother? I chose my words carefully. I think Paige loves her kids. But love isn't enough. She's consistently put her own needs above theirs. Sean, on the other hand, has been a consistent, loving presence. If the goal is stability and the kids' well-being, Sean's the better choice. The final nail in the coffin came from an unexpected source. Scott's school counselor. She'd been working with Scott since the separation started, and she had pages of notes about his emotional state. She testified that Scott had expressed feeling caught between his parents, that Paige had been feeding him a narrative that Sean was the villain, that this was destroying Scott's mental health. He told me he wished everything could go back to normal, the counselor said. But he also said he felt safer when he was with his father, that his mother made him feel like he had to choose sides. Paige's lawyer tried to discredit the counselor, but it didn't work. The damage was done. After 2 days of testimony, the judge called for closing arguments. Julia hammered home the key points. Paige's deception, her inability to put the kids first. She argued that Sean had proven himself to be the stable, loving parent the kids needed. Judge Brennan took a 10-minute recess, then came back with her decision. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case. I'm awarding primary physical custody to Mr. Sean, with supervised visitation for Ms. Paige. The gavel came down. Paige's face went white. Sean exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. He walked out of that courtroom looking like a different person, lighter. His lawyer shook his hand, told him she'd file the final paperwork, and reminded him that Paige could still appeal. But given the strength of the case, it was unlikely to succeed. Paige didn't handle it well. She stood frozen for a moment after the judge's ruling, then turned to her lawyer and started arguing. Her lawyer looked exhausted, like he'd spent the entire trial trying to manage an impossible client. Outside the courthouse, Sean pulled me and Kate aside. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, and his voice cracked. "You guys showed up when Paige's family wouldn't. Your family too," I said. "And you were there for those kids when it mattered. That's all that counts." Kate hugged him. "You're going to do great, Sean. Those kids are lucky to have you." He nodded, wiped his eyes, and headed to his car. He had to pick up Scott and Chloe from school. I felt good about it. Not in a vengeful way. Though I won't lie, watching Paige lose was satisfying, but because the right thing happened. The kids were going to be okay. They had a solid parent in their corner. Paige, on the other hand, spiraled. My mom called me that night, crying. "She's devastated, Hunter. She lost her children." "How can you be okay with this?" I said, keeping my voice even. "She lied, cheated, manipulated, and created an unstable environment." The judge made the right call. She hung up on me. Again. It was becoming a pattern. The family dynamic shifted after that. Holiday plans fell apart because nobody could agree on where to be or who to invite. Paige refused to show up if Sean and the kids were there. My parents tried to stay neutral and ended up ticking everyone off. It was messy, but it was honest. Melanie asked me once why we weren't seeing Aunt Paige anymore. "Aunt Paige made some bad choices," I said carefully. "We're still supporting Scott and Chloe, but Aunt Paige and I aren't going to be close for a while. Is Scott going to be okay? He's got his dad. He's got us. He'll be okay." Melanie went back to her homework, satisfied with that answer. A few months in, Scott and Chloe adjusted, started therapy, slowly healed. Sean started dating someone new, a teacher from Chloe's school. Nice woman, patient, good for him. Paige got her supervised visitation, 2 hours every other Saturday at a family resource center. From what I heard through the grapevine, the visits were awkward. She spent most of the time trying to convince the kids that Sean had turned them against her, that the court system was unfair, that she was the real victim. The kids stopped engaging, stopped opening up, and eventually the visits became something they endured rather than enjoyed. The court-ordered therapist noted all of this, recommended that Paige get her own counseling to work through her issues before the visitation schedule was revisited. She refused, said she didn't need therapy, that everyone else was the problem. Shocking. As for the family trust money, I got the notification that Paige's share had been officially redistributed. Half went to me, half to our younger brother. I didn't need the money, Kate and I were doing fine, but I wasn't about to turn it down either. We put it into Melanie's college fund. Seemed fitting. Paige found out and sent me one final text, unblocked just long enough to get the message through. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed my life." I stared at it for a second, then typed back, "You made your bed, sister." Blocked her again. Haven't heard from her since. Christmas next year was at our place. Sean brought the kids. My younger brother showed up with his wife and kids. A few cousins who'd stayed neutral during the whole mess came by. My parents did not attend. They'd chosen to spend the holiday with Paige, which was fine by me. Less tension, more pie. The house was peaceful. Life's funny that way. You try to destroy someone else, but sometimes karma decides otherwise. Paige learned that lesson the hard way. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.